Today, we are strapping in for a descent into a world that's just defined by paranoia, by conspiracy, and really the ultimate marriage of technology and control.
We are talking about Thomas Pynchon's monumental 1973 novel, Gravity's Rainbow.
Exactly.
This book, it's an epic journey through the chaotic end of World War II, and it all centers on the terror and also the mystique surrounding the V-2 rocket.
It's sprawling, it's complicated, it's often, hilarious, and then it's frequently exhausting. It's a true maximalist text.
But we're doing this deep dive right now for one really specific reason. As this novel turns 50, its world feels less like historical fiction and, well, more like an unnervingly accurate blueprint for our current moment.
That's it. The sheer scope of its vision has finally caught up to our reality.
So that's the mission for today.
Right. We've pulled together literary analysis, some really interesting historical context on Pynchon's own highly technical background, and then a critical deep dive into the architecture of modern digital surveillance and search technology.
We want to connect the dots.
We need to connect the looming apocalypse, embodied by that V-2, that pure fixed parabola of deterministic death, with, the modern era of paranoid conspiracies.
And the rocket-obsessed oligarchs.
Yes. Today's tech giants who build these systems that monetize our intentions and really control our knowledge.
It's the ultimate transition, isn't it? From control through industrial production and physical warfare, like with wartime cartels such as IG Farben, to control achieved through data extraction and digital architecture.
We're going to try and expose the DNA of modern systemic control, just as Pynchon somehow foresaw it.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
So to really grasp the foundations of Gravity's Rainbow, you have to understand that Pynchon's obsession with rockets wasn't just, academic or literary.
Not at all. Our sources confirm this fascinating biographical detail that really grounds his philosophical critique in hard technical reality.
And that is his job at Boeing.
Exactly. Pynchon's surprising documented employment at the Boeing Airplane Company in Seattle. He starts working there in early 1960, right around the time he's deep in the middle of writing his first major novel, V.
And it's maybe the best documented period of his life, which is ironic for such a reclusive author.
Right. Simply because payrolls and internal publications, they create a paper trail. You can't escape it.
And the nature of his work there is so critical to all this. Research shows he wasn't just like shuffling papers.
No, he wrote extensively. We're talking at least 25 to 30 technical articles, mostly for an internal newsletter called the Beaumark Service News.
This wasn't poetry. This was professional, hardcore technical writing.
And the Beaumark missile was a serious piece of Cold War equipment. It was a surface-to-air continental defense weapon designed to intercept Soviet bombers.
So by writing these articles, Pynchon got this deep, granular understanding of rocketry.
Totally. The sheer logistical organization required to build them, to maintain them, to deploy them, the specific engineering failures, the suffocating bureaucracy that surrounds these massive military-industrial projects.
And he wasn't just imagining it.
He was immersed in it. This immersion in the specifics of the Beaumark missile bureaucracy is cited as the near-certain technical foundation for Gravity's Rainbow. He learned firsthand how the system works, not just the machine, but the whole organizational structure behind it.
And that specific machine that becomes the ultimate symbol of control in the novel is, of course, the German V-2 rocket.
Specifically, the one all the characters are chasing, the terrifying, elusive 00000 rocket.
The V-2 serves as the ultimate data point, but also this object of, mystic worship.
It really is the central image, but Pynchon splits its meaning in two, radically. On one side, you have this rational, modern, industrial vision.
Right, the German rocket engineers like Walter Dornberger.
Yeah. They saw the V-2 as this pinnacle of achievement. Inaugurating a triumphant new phase for humanity, a transition into the space age. It's the ultimate expression of man's industrial ambition and technological mastery.
But Pynchon immediately juxtaposes that soaring, kind of optimistic if murderous vision with this deep cynicism.
He does. He gives a voice to the Zone Harrow, the African Schwartz commandos, who are led by this enigmatic figure, Enzian.
And for them, the rocket is the opposite of a beginning.
The absolute opposite. It's the final phase, a movement towards stillness, which is just an instrument of ritualistic racial suicide.
Wow.
They want to use the ultimate destructive industrial artifact to enact their own death. They prefer that swift, violent end over the slow, agonizing decline that was caused by colonial attrition.
And we can't talk about this industrial ambition without getting into the physical reality of it all.
No, you really can't. Historically, the production of the V-2 was housed at the Middlework underground base, and it relied entirely on slave labor drawn from the Dora concentration camp.
It's a shocking detail, but it's one you have to remember.
It is. More people died manufacturing the V-2 rockets than were ever killed by their operational use in combat.
That detail is so profoundly important, it just underscores Pynchon's ultimate thesis, which is that the bureaucratic, industrial architecture of control, the system of production, supply chains, managerial indifference, that's often more lethal than the weapon it creates.
The system is the real enemy, not just the parabola of the rocket.
And this huge industrial system feeds directly into this obsessive, paranoid intelligence organization run by the British.
The White Visitation.
Right, and they're the ones driving the main plot of the novel. Their entire focus is on an American officer, Lieutenant Tyrone Slothrop.
He's their unwitting research subject.
Because he has this bizarre, almost ludicrous ability. His erections predict the precise impact sites of V-2 rockets in London.
The prediction precedes the impact, every single time.
And the British intelligence experts, they're not primarily focused on winning the war. They're focused on proving something much, much larger about the nature of existence.
They want total certainty. Their goal is to prove the stone determinacy of everything, every soul. They want to unlock a Laplacian equation for the universe.
And that idea, the Laplacian equation, it historically suggests that if you knew the precise position and velocity of every particle in the universe at one moment,
you could predict every future event. They're seeking a fixed, ironclad sequence of cause and effect.
But the absurdity is that their fixed sequence is Boner precedes rocket.
Right. It doesn't even matter that the cause appears to follow the effect. They just need a fixed mathematical function that proves the universe isn't random, it's not contingent.
Because knowledge of the sequence equals total control.
You eliminate human agency entirely.
The contrast between this cosmic quest for certainty and just the triviality of Slothrop's arousal is classic Pynchon. It brilliantly introduces that tension between chaos and order.
And the scientists themselves can't even agree on the cause. You have Roger Mexico, the statistician, and he just views it as a statistical freak accident, just random chance.
While others are suggesting things like precognition or telepathy.
And then you get the Freudian, Edmund Treacle, who comes in with this ultimate jargon-heavy analysis. Slothrop is exercising psychokinesis. He's subconsciously willing the rockets to fall to mark his sexual conquests.
And Pynchon is clearly just mocking this over-analytical, reductive attempt to shoehorn human complexity into some predetermined scientific framework.
What's fascinating here is the intellectual foundation for this tension. Pynchon wrote Gravity's Rainbow after being heavily influenced by the ideas of Norbert Wiener.
His book, The Human Use of Human Beings.
Exactly, published in 1967, and Wiener dealt extensively with the theory of entropy.
Entropy, the fundamental law of thermodynamics. Pynchon summarized it through Wiener's observation that the universe is running downhill.
It's the measure of disorder and decline. Everything is tending toward heat death, or maximum disorder.
So Pynchon is grappling with this deep universal certainty, this deterministic order that's leading inevitably toward decline.
Yet at the same time, he just bombards the reader with these moments of pure spontaneity and chance, where radically contradictory possibilities coexist.
And that struggle between the inexorable decline dictated by physics and the chaotic, vital energy of human life, that's the core engine of the novel.
Absolutely, and you see it embodied in the conflict between the scientists themselves. The antagonist of Part 1 is Ned Pointsman. He's the behaviorist, Slothrop's superior, obsessed with conditioning and control.
A true believer in the deterministic system.
While on the other side, the side of human chance, you have Roger Mexico, the brilliant mathematician who champions human indeterminacy.
And he actively resists Pointsman's rigid behaviorism.
Right. He embodies this belief that human life, however chaotic it is, resists being mapped, predicted, or controlled by a single all-encompassing equation. It's the struggle between the rocket's fixed downward parabola and, the unpredictability of a human soul.
Pynchon doesn't just write about chaos and resistance. He makes the reader experience it. The structural choice of the novel is just as crucial as its thematic content.
Oh, absolutely. Instead of a clean, linear, historical narrative, you're just plunged into this fragmented, non-chronological structure that actively rejects simple sense-making.
Which is pretty much the definition of postmodernism in literature.
Right, exactly. Pynchon excels at what seems like non-linear chaos and apparent inconsistency, but it's organized precisely to reject that search for a singular truth or master narrative that preoccupied the modernists.
So the narrative takes the form of a rhizome, which is a term borrowed from philosophy.
Right. And if you think of a traditional novel, a modernist work, as like a tree or root structure, it plots a fixed hierarchical order, moving logically from beginning to middle to end. The rhizome is the complete opposite.
Think of it like grass or ginger spreading underground.
It's a network where any point can connect to any other point. There's no fixed center, no real beginning or end. In Gravity's Rainbow, the plots are constantly disintegrated, historical events are scattered haphazardly, and characters connect in these bizarre, seemingly unrelated ways.
But that very confusion establishes a continuity between the material universe, the physical rocket, and the social reality of the paranoid organizations.
And the narration technique itself mirrors that structure. Critics describe it as a free-floating consciousness.
So the narrator might briefly glom onto a character like Pirate Prentice, delve deep into their involuntary thoughts, and then instantly shift.
And zoom onto an entirely separate character within that same story, and then shift again to give you the perspective of, I don't know, a sentient light bulb.
That constantly shifting point of view forces you, the reader, to recognize that these radically different realities, the German perspective, the hero perspective, the British scientist, they don't just coexist.
They collide, they interpenetrate constantly. And this is the fundamental postmodern break from modernism's search for a single integrated reality.
And this structural shift is accompanied by a famous psychological one. I've heard thinkers associate the move from modernism to postmodernism with a shift from paranoia to schizophrenia.
Yeah, and that helps us understand Pynchon's characters. Paranoia, in this context, is still fundamentally rational. It's the modernist impulse to interpret every single piece of evidence and rumor, no matter how disconnected, into a grand, hidden master narrative.
You're still looking for the ultimate singular truth behind the curtain.
Exactly. The white visitation seeking that Laplacian equation, they are the ultimate paranoiacs.
Postmodern schizophrenia, on the other hand, is the inability to connect past and present, or fragment A to fragment B.
Yeah.
It's disorder because the grand narrative is rejected, or maybe it just doesn't exist.
And the narrative itself makes you experience that.
And nothing embodies this fragmentation quite like the fate of Tyrone Slothrop. He's arguably the protagonist, but he doesn't get a traditional heroic or tragic ending.
No, he just thins, he scatters. He starts having increasing difficulty remembering his own past or even his immediate present long before the book is over.
He dissolves.
Yeah.
He becomes literally less dense.
And this physical dissipation is one of the novel's most discussed ambiguities. Literary interpretations are all over the place. Joseph Slade saw it as a metaphor for the helplessness of innocence against these immense power structures. The system just absorbs and disperses you.
Right. Well, William Plater saw it as an illustration of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
That's a good one. The more intensely he's observed and quantified by his intelligence handlers, the more he disperses, defying measurement. If they know everything about him, he stops being a fixed point.
Pynchon gives his own sort of tragic comic explanation through this obscure figure, Kurt Mondaugen, whose law states that personal density is directly proportional to temporal bandwidth.
And bandwidth here means the ability to connect your past and your present. So as Slothrop loses his connection to his own history and memory, his personal density thins out.
He becomes effectively data dust.
And as Slothrop dissolves into this fragmented collection of data, Pynchon provides these stunningly clear precursors to what we now call cyberspace.
He signals a shift from physical war to information war almost instantly. When Pirate Prentice involuntarily sees a V-2 launch, his thought is incoming mail.
Think about that for a moment. He treats this high-speed missile not as a physical weapon of mass destruction, but as a packet of information, a signal sent and received. The novel is constantly drawing this distinction between this new, instantaneous communication medium and good old snail mail.
And Pirate Prentice himself, he functions like a human receiving node. His bizarre involuntary talent for receiving and experiencing other people's fantasies and thought streams.
It makes him a disembodied, spiritual, cybernetic node. He is the living prototype of a GIF file receiver, just constantly processing this influx of external data.
But the most profoundly chilling prophecy is in that long digression in the 4th section, the story of Byron the Bulb.
Oh, Byron the Bulb. This sentient, immortal light bulb that refuses to burn out. He's rejecting the concept of planned obsolescence imposed by the international light bulb cartel.
Which is a clear analog for IG Farben and the industrial complexes Pynchon hated.
And Byron's resistance is significant because he connects to other immortal bulbs on the global grid at something close to the speed of light.
Pynchon is describing an interconnected, high-speed information network, a proto-internet.
Written in 1973, decades before the commercial web existed. This isn't just a prediction, it's a diagnosis of the inevitable control structure that network would enable.
And Byron the Bulb's ultimate fate is the most cynical part of the prophecy.
It is. He will soon know everything and still be as impotent as before.
Pynchon warned us about the information overload paradox. When the network is wide open and all messages can be intercepted by the cartels, universal access to data doesn't translate into agency or power.
It just translates into overwhelming, paralyzing awareness.
That structural paranoia, the fragmentation of identity under total observation, that brings us directly into the 21st century.
It really does. The tension in Pynchon between the desire for global connection and the fear of corporate control has become the defining principle of our daily existence.
The V-2's parabola was fixed by gravity. The modern search engine's parabola is fixed by the logic of the algorithm.
We have to bridge that gap between the industrial oligarchs Pynchon wrote about and the tech oligarchs we live under. The economic model hasn't fundamentally changed since the IG Farben era. It's just shifted from controlling physical resources, oil, rubber, chemicals, to controlling the path to information.
But the goal is still the same.
Total profit-driven control by systems that seek to eliminate chance.
Pynchon, in this brilliant moment of philosophical ambiguity, suggests that the Earth itself might be a living meta-organism, this thing called Gaia, which is organically growing a nervous system composed of far-flung synapses.
Right. And if the planet is evolving into this living critter, then cyberspace becomes its mind. But that global neural web is now dominated by corporations, creating the ultimate deterministic control system.
Pynchon even suggests that cyberspace provides the subterranean loop necessary to complete the aerial parabola of the rainbow into an eternally returning cycle of wholeness.
Which is a chilling image. And if you think about how the crucial infrastructure, the T1 phone, links that power the backbone of the internet run beneath the Earth's surface, not through geostationary satellites because they're too slow, you realize cyberspace is literally the down-there nervous system Pynchon suggested.
It's the ultimate control mechanism hidden just beneath the surface.
So to understand how this digital control system emerged, we have to look back further than the web itself and study the historical genesis of information organization.
The impulse to catalog and control knowledge is ancient. Search is not a new idea.
Not at all. Back in 17th century Paris, the Bureau d'Adresse served as a surprisingly effective early analog. This office acted as a public convenience, essentially a clearinghouse where people could post inquiries if they wanted to sell, buy, or find information.
A pre-internet Craigslist, basically.
Pretty much. They employed what you might call human crawlers, staff members who collected inquiries and transcribed them into these massive registers, acting as proto-data centers.
But here's the critical dual nature, present from the very start.
Exactly. While serving the community, our sources note that the office quickly began to assume policing functions for the city. Convenience and surveillance were two sides of the same coin, right at the dawn of centralized information management.
That impulse then accelerated in the late 19th century with the Mundanium.
Conceived in 1895 by Paul Otlet and Henri Lafontaine, their goal was monumental: to be a universal catalog, a mechanical collective brain containing the documented knowledge of the entire world on millions of index cards.
They sought total organization through a complex classification system, aiming for a single, comprehensive knowledge structure.
And then we get to the direct technical predecessor of the Internet, Vannevar Bush's 1945 proposal for the MEMEX.
The memory extender.
Right. This device was intended to store all of an individual's professional and personal library on microfilm. But Bush's true innovation was associative indexing, where users could create individualized, non-linear trails of documents.
And those trails are what we now call hyperlinks.
The very mechanism that connects disparate pieces of information. Bush foresaw the web's core mechanism, the hodology or the path that links information, making knowledge instantly accessible but also mappable.
And the ultimate modern manifestation of this organizational impulse, the entity that captures our intentions and creates the deterministic feedback loop Pynchon feared, is Google.
Of course. The company's colossal financial success rests on two specific, highly proprietary algorithms.
Okay, so the first one makes it popular by associating billions of web pages to our specific, often vague queries.
And the second algorithm makes it rich by assigning commercial, monetized value to the keywords we use. These two mechanisms create an engine of information that extracts capital from intention.
The popularity engine, that's PageRank, it measures relevance by valuing hyperlinks, what people call Google Juice, prioritizing sources based on how many other sources link to them.
A structure that mimics Eugene Garfield's scientific citation index, which values the canonical or authoritative voices.
But this system ensures that search results are prioritized not just on intellectual authority, but on a blend of authority and economic forces. Who has the most juice, who has the best SEO, and who pays.
And the result, as some sources suggest, is that the search results become a map of a plutocracy. They reflect vested interests rather than pure objective truth.
And while Google presents its services as this objective public utility, the mechanism itself is completely hidden. The algorithm is a black box.
A proprietary secret sauce that guards the company's competitive edge. Pinchon warned that the grid is wide open and messages can be overheard. But the crucial point is that the rules of observation, the logic of the algorithm, are concealed from the observed user.
And we've seen a critical, deterministic shift in recent years from the fixed mathematics of PageRank to RankBrain.
Yes, this is a machine learning algorithm now implemented to handle all unfamiliar or novel search queries, and this transition is profound.
Why is this so profound?
Because it means the algorithm is no longer just indexing based on established link authority. It signifies Google's ambition to model the search engine on the human brain itself.
Actively moving toward the realization of H.G. Wells's utopian concept of the world brain.
But this world brain is owned by a single corporation, and its invisible criteria are dictated by machine learning that evolves in secret. It aims not just to categorize information, but to predict the user.
Which brings us to the profound consequence for you, the user. Search engines are fundamentally profiling machines.
They track everything. Your IP address, your query keywords, your activity logs, your search history. They create a second index, a hyper-personalized database for every individual user.
This process fundamentally changes the user's identity. You are transformed from a consumer or a citizen into a data subject.
Or, even more accurately, you become a individual, a term from the philosopher Gilles Deleuze. If the individual was a whole, contained person, the individual is just the pieces of data, your credit score, your search history, your IP address, that can be constantly scrutinized, calculated, circulated, and reassembled for corporate purposes.
You're no longer a person. You're a moving constellation of data points, reduced to data dust.
And this collection, what's often called behavioral surplus, is extracted from the user, who is kept willfully ignorant of the process, creating an inherently asymmetrical power relationship.
This is exactly the premise of novels that parody the modern system, like Dave Eggers' The Circle.
Right. In that fictional world, the server steward stores the raw data of a transparent man, constantly wanting scenarios to map the world and predict behavior. The user is kept completely ignorant of the true machinations of the system.
Which reflects the black box dilemma we face today, where data about us is more comprehensive than our own self-knowledge.
And critically, this personalized data subject is subjected to the search engine as the arbiter of truth. Because search results are structured by a mix of economic prioritization and algorithmic authority, they don't just reflect culture, they reciprocally shape culture.
The public, subconsciously or explicitly, engages with search engines as if they possess ultimate authority. They're often demanded to act as stewards of authoritative historical truth, for example, concerning politically sensitive events.
They're expected to present the correct version of history, which places immense power in the hands of the corporate entity that's determining the ranking.
The potential for social and political harm is terrifyingly kinetic. Just consider the example of Dylan Roof's hate crime manifesto.
He stated that he was influenced by his initial Google search for black-on-white crime.
And that query led him immediately, via the ranking system, to the Council of Conservative Citizens, a white supremacist organization, instead of, vetted historical experts or objective crime statistics.
And this is the challenge. Search is not merely organizing pages on a server. It is actively structuring knowledge and subsequently structuring reality.
The final ranking, the result you see on the first page, it inevitably reflects the political, social, and cultural values and the economic interests of the society and the company that designed the system.
The deterministic control Pynchon feared has been realized through the most common human act of curiosity, typing a query.
So if the modern digital domain is defined by this ubiquitous deterministic system of surveillance capitalism, then resistance isn't optional. It's structurally necessary.
It completely mirrors the struggles Pynchon chronicled against the international cartel. And the core operational principle of digital privacy is simple. The defense of privacy always follows the emergence of new technologies for the exposure of secrets. It's an arms race.
This arms race began long before the commercial internet was even a thing.
Way before. Think back to the pioneering cryptographer David Chaum's work in the early 1980s. He predicted the necessity of hiding email content, which cryptography handles well, but more importantly, he predicted the critical need to hide metadata.
The data about the data, specifically where and when communications are sent.
That's the real key to surveillance. Chaum recognized that hiding the content wasn't enough. Traffic analysis, just studying the patterns of communication, could expose everyone.
So what was his solution?
He proposed applying public key cryptography to create mixes and cascades, protocols designed to shuffle and disguise communication patterns, ensuring anonymity by breaking that network of connections.
And that very act of organizing anonymously against these international all-knowing organizations is precisely the struggle of the counterforce in Gravity's Rainbow.
Which is why Roger Mexico, the mathematician who champions human indeterminacy and chaos, joins the counterforce.
He's actively resisting the deterministic logic of his superior, Pointsman, by joining a group that's dedicated to throwing sand in the gears of the monolithic system.
The modern technical iteration of this resistance, the inheritor of Chaum's vision, is technology like Tor the Onion Router.
Tor is the primary technology enabling user anonymity online. It routes traffic through thousands of relays, wrapping and unwrapping layers of encryption like an onion to obscure the source and destination.
It is, yeah, it's slower, but it's an essential alternative that allows journalists, political activists, and dissidents operating under oppressive regimes around the world to protect their communication.
It's a collective infrastructure designed to circumvent the profiling and tracking that's just inherent in the commercial web.
We should probably clarify the landscape here. There's the deep web, which just contains material not indexed by standard commercial search engines.
Like academic databases, password-protected forums, your email inbox. It's mundane.
And then there is the dark web or darknet. This exists alongside the deep web, but it's intentionally hidden. You need special software like Tor to enter and access it.
And media coverage often portrays it exclusively as a territory for criminality, drug markets, illicit services, organized crime.
But our sources emphasize its critical dual identity. It acts as a necessary parallel universe, offering secure, encrypted communication, hosting dissident literature, and providing a platform for freedom of speech in places where the open internet is heavily censored and surveilled.
It upholds the ideal of the anonymous pamphleteer from the U.S. First Amendment, just channeled through a digital encrypted mechanism.
But the resistance is in continuous combat with the powers of state and corporate surveillance. Tor does not guarantee perfect anonymity.
Right, its performance constantly needs improvement. For example, the exit node operators, the final computer relays that decrypt the traffic before it hits the open web, they can potentially capture data.
Cracking Tor is often viewed by security agencies as the holy grail of exploits.
And this vulnerability came into very sharp focus in 2015 with the high-profile FBI CMU scandal.
Researchers at Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute successfully de-anonymized Tor users and hidden services, reportedly obtaining upwards of 1,000 IP addresses.
And the sources reveal that the FBI may have subpoenaed the research or potentially even paid for the exploit.
Which raises immense constitutional issues regarding the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable search and seizure. If the government can just purchase an exploit to pierce collective anonymity, where does the individual's digital freedom lie?
And the legal fallout from that practice was defining and honestly pretty chilling. A U.S. district judge later ruled in a separate case that identifying a user's IP address through their use of Tor did not constitute a Fourth Amendment search.
What was the reasoning?
It was based on an older precedent called the third-party doctrine. If people willingly give their IP address to a third-party ISP, they have no reasonable expectation of privacy.
That ruling profoundly expands the power of electronic surveillance over the digital subject. It suggests that efforts at digital self-preservation, like using Tor, are not constitutionally protected.
Which only accelerates the need for proactive resistance. Users now have to deploy active tactics of digital resistance, like obfuscation, to counter the profiling machines.
A prime example is software like TrackMeNot, which generates decoy search queries continuously to foil profiling algorithms. The user is actively creating digital chaos data dust to confuse the deterministic system.
This movement represents a conceptual shift from purely individual privacy concerns to the value of a collective commons.
Exactly. Tor itself is an infrastructure for individual and collective agency. It relies on the voluntary cooperation of thousands of volunteers to ensure that the shared resource anonymity maintains its use value.
It's like those historical address offices that promoted shared knowledge access. But this time, the goal is protection, not collection.
The figure embodying this collective agency is the algorithmic anonymous user, who employs tools like Tor and hardened operating systems like Tails. This user acts directly against the sharevalence model.
The implicit contract where you share all your data in exchange for corporate services.
Right, and they demand anonymity not as a simple preference, but as a political, non-negotiable act.
This is a fight for a redistribution of the sensible. A philosophical concept meaning changing who is seen, who is heard, and who is allowed to participate without being immediately scrutinized, tracked, and monetized.
The battle against digital determinism is fought daily by this collective, anonymous resistance.
So we began this deep dive with the physical, deterministic terror of the V-2 rocket, a pure product of industrial conspiracy, a fixed parabola of steel and fuel designed to eliminate chance.
And we've concluded with the digital deterministic terror of the rank brain algorithm, a pure product of surveillance capitalism, a black box that extracts our deepest intentions and uses them to shape our behavior.
Pynchon's fragmented vision of a world relentlessly controlled by invisible systems does absolutely become our reality.
Our casual search queries are no longer just searches, they are monetized intentions. Our individual complexity is reduced to the individual, composed of data points that are endlessly assembled, calculated, and sold.
The architects of today's digital world are the rocket-obsessed oligarchs that Pynchon prophetically warned us about.
And the true, terrifying ambition of this new digital determinism, this quest for the Laplacian equation in data form, is perhaps best illustrated by Google's own internal concept video, The Selfish Ledger.
This proposed a database where user data would survive the user,
literally becoming a kind of genetic code for future generations.
This ledger is designed to make increasingly accurate predictions about not just what you will buy, but what decisions you will make.
And the ultimate chilling conclusion proposed in the video is called behavioral sequencing. The ledger suggests that just as the human genome can be mapped and targeted, the patterns that begin to emerge in our behavioral data can also be targeted and modified.
This is the ultimate corporate realization of the total deterministic control. Pynchon spent hundreds of pages deconstructing.
So what does this all mean?
Pynchon's novel famously ends with the final rocket, the 0000, passing through space, time, and ontological reality, seemingly destroying the reader in a final, all-encompassing scream.
And the story loops back on itself, implying there is only the screaming. The control is eternal.
If Pynchon's ultimate fear was the stone determinacy of everything, and modern algorithms now actively aim for behavioral sequencing based on the intimate data we continuously provide, we have to ask ourselves a question.
Is the right to disappear, as proposed by the fictional anarchist Calden, that act of dropping out and dissolving into the digital noise, is that the last meaningful act of individual agency left?
Or is collective anonymity, the ongoing collaborative resistance of the Tor PTP network, the only viable defense against becoming a fully sequenced and predictable data subject? That's something for you to mull over as you next reach for your keyboard and submit your intentions to the digital grid.